1 week season.
Hey, and welcome in, OWS fam. So glad you are with us. We're back in the DFS lab, and as always, the show presented by 1 week season. It is Friday, November 15th. We're headed into week 11, and purpose of this show, build a DraftKings lineup, use that as a vehicle to talk through the upcoming slate. I'm your host, Cheeseman, and I am it's an honor to welcome up Papy. Papy, how was week 10 for you, bud?
You know, it was an all right week. I won, so you can't ever complain in a week when you win in DFS, but it was a frustrating win because it wasn't a huge win, and it was probably the lowest scoring week in my memory. I mean, I think like 178 or something won the Millie Maker. It was really a low scoring week. And I went into the 4 o'clocks with like 120-ish on my main team. Had a lot of the receivers right. I had Pickens and Wilson on that team, and then I had a lot of Purdy, and I had a lot of Mitchell, a lot of Hollins. So I had a lot of pieces that looked good for the week. And I had Saquon Barkley left, who was my only player left. I had like 120 something. I was like, all right, Saquon, he's gonna at least get like 15 or 20. And like if he has one of his 30-point days, this is gonna be a really nice week. And then of course, 8 or 9 or whatever, your worst week of the year. And you're sitting here just being like, how do you have, your 8.3K, chalk running back gets at least 15 every week, get you his worst game of the year when you're sitting here like every point he gets you make like $1,000, and you're just like you can't get any points today. So it was a frustrating win, but you take wins in DFS, so not the end of the world.
Man, that has happened to me before, and that is just the worst feeling when you hit like the Ricky Pearsalls, or like you said, Mac Hollins, like those more thin plays you hit, and then it's just like I just need like the stud that I paid up for to have a solid game. Maybe a ceiling game would be nice, and that's where you're thinking like I could have a smash week, and then he has probably his worst game of the entire season is what we saw this past Sunday. Then the last night he just completely smashes, just completely adding insult to injury. It's tough, man. Yeah, I had a tough week. I locked CMC, just kind of went with the conviction there. It was just like, his ownership's probably going to be a little lower because people are going to be kind of taking a wait and see approach with him. And so I locked him. I had a lot of Saquon as well. I played some Chiefs stacks. I had liked that earlier in the week. And just with the absence of anything else, just amazing that I really felt fit my play style, I just figured, no one's going to play the Chiefs. So I know it's a tough matchup, but if they end up putting up a big score, and they had a lot of trips into the red zone, they just couldn't score touchdowns. So, yeah, man. But, week 11 is upon us. So, for me, at least, I'm glad you had a winning week. For me, at least, washing that away, and hopefully week 11. I'm feeling actually good about week 11. And I feel like it's an easier week to there's some conviction plays that I feel like I could just maybe lock a couple of plays. But let's look at this. Let's start with ownership. And I got the oneweekseason.com ownership pulled up here. Where do you want to start on this? I'll just pull up the full ownership. What stands out to you?
Yeah, so it's interesting that this is sort of the time of the year when I think that we know who people are. Like we know who players are. We know how they're going to be used. We know how teams want to play. We're to that point in the year. And you can see like Kamara, A-Chain, and CMC, like they're the chalk running backs, but they should be. I mean, they're the 3 best plays, like probably pretty clearly. I don't know that I'll try to jam all 3 in on a roster, but certainly I'm going to have many rosters where I use 2 out of the 3 as my 2, running backs. And it's also interesting that this season has been so running back oriented, where teams have really not thrown. You're not seeing a lot of the big games out of the wide receivers. I mean, look at ownership. Who's the highest priced wide receiver that you even see that's going to have any ownership? I mean, it's like normally you're going to see like Justin Jefferson and Tyreek Hill and the big receivers are going to always pretty much draw some ownership, and they're really not. And it's because they're not performing. They're not.
They haven't paid off. Yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, their prices haven't really fallen. Like if you scroll down and find like Tyreek Hill or Justin Jefferson, I don't even know where they are on there, but they're not anticipated to be very owned.
There's Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah, him too. Yeah, him too. Same thing.
Tyreek Hill, 8%. Let's see. Where's Jefferson? He's probably going to be 5%.
Yeah. So, and you see, like they're still 8K, like, you know, they're still really expensive. But if you look at their box scores, like they're not scoring like they used to. So you can understand it, why that sort of is happening. That like people don't want to pay 8.6K for a guy who hasn't been putting up those 40-point games. The only receiver who's broken slates this year is Jamar Chase.
I mean, do you think that DraftKings should be like taking a little bit different of a stance? It almost feels like they're kind of boxing players into just like there's just not a plus EV way. You're just hoping for an explosive game, but I feel like if they just lower the prices to kind of um to kind of go in line with what their scores have been, it would make it a little more interesting. I feel if you drop the prices on some of these receivers and just to kind of match more what they put up instead of just keeping them so high, no one wants to play them.
I mean, I agree. And again, like, why is Jefferson 8.6K, but like the stud running backs are cheaper when the stud running backs have been putting up huge scores and he hasn't? You know,
It doesn't make a ton of sense. Yeah.
it doesn't. And I think that what DK is doing is just following their normal algorithm where it's like, okay, well, we're not going to like overreact. These guys who we know are stud receivers have off games. But what they're not really doing is saying like, the league is playing differently this year. I mean, it's so noticeable that they are not throwing this year. I mean, other than the Bengals, who have a pass rate over expectations rating that's in line with, you know, prior years teams, there's not another team in the whole league that's really throwing like teams did in the past. And I'm not sure if that's just because like half of the coaches are now all the extended Gary Kubiak, you know, tree. Like everybody just decided that's what we want. That's the only thing we want is this. And so it's like all the coaches are that now. So then everybody just plays the same way. And then, you know, but I almost feel like that's what happened, you know, 10 years ago. It was like, well, everybody just wanted to be Peyton Manning and Tom Brady and Drew Brees and just throw and throw and throw and throw. And then defenses like adjusted and came up with different ways to stop just throwing. Right. And then it was like, oh, well, these teams that just run the ball now, they're the ones that work because everyone's geared up to stop the pass. And so now like the 49ers offense is the one you want. And so now everybody does that. And now it's like, okay, well, so now I guess defenses will just switch back to being run stopping units. And then it'll be like, oh, we have to throw again.
It'll
like
flip back. Exactly.
You know,
right.
I guess that, but right now we're in a point where it's like teams are running and they're really not throwing like they used to. So, you know, if you're going to see the top running backs at like 8.2, 7.2, and what's CMC 8.3, and then you're going to see Jefferson at like 8.6, it doesn't make a lot of sense to go there.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's exactly what you're seeing here. Like you said, anything you want to like, where else you want to look with ownership?
The other thing that I think is interesting is that I guess the like chalk team of the week is going to be the 49ers. You know, you're going to see ownership pretty much on all of the 49ers be relatively high at their various positions, which, you know, okay, like I get it. You know, they're at home and they have a pretty good matchup and they tend to score points. So someone's probably going to get it. But the other thing with the 49ers is it's always like someone gets it, but it's never like everybody gets it. So, you know, if you're picking a Niner, I get it. But if you're playing like a ton of Niners, you might end up being disappointed with some of them.
You got to pick the right 49er.
Yeah. And to me, the team of the week is the Dolphins. I think that's the team of the week that's going to score the most points. The Raiders have given up, you know, just a ton of points, and the Raiders kind of stink of a team that's given up. I just think the Dolphins at home, when they haven't really been that great offensively, are going to try to like, you know, show everybody we're still the Dolphins. I think they could put up like 49 on them. I think that the Dolphins are going to be the team of the week. So it's just my feeling.
I like that, man. Well, I feel like that's kind of a segue into our lineup building here. So I'll just pull up DraftKings. I've already got on this Friday show, you build a lineup for the Millionaire. So you got to be bold and take a couple chances with 150,000 entries. But of course, if you're right, it's a pretty sweet payoff. So where do you want to start with this lineup?
So we'll start with our game stack, and we're going to be a little bit unique, I guess, or try to be unique. And we're going to go with Tua and, after I just typed up the Dolphins, you probably could have guessed that. And A-Chain at running back again. You know, you can probably guess that. As far as pricing goes, like I mean, A-Chain's going to be a staple of my builds this week. He's just too cheap. I mean, he should be another $1,000 more expensive. He's been, used really as their sort of, I don't even want to call him the RB one, because it's really, he only gets like 10 to 15 carries, but he gets so many targets that it's like a hybrid RB wide receiver one sort of role that he's in. And it's great for fantasy. And if you look at it, if you click on his box score, if you look at his game stats here, it's like his targets are, especially with Tua back, before, forget the pre-Tua time because they were silly. But, if you look at his games with Tua, it's like he gets like 5 to 8 targets at least every game. Yeah. And that's just a lot for a guy who's also going to be getting 10 to 15 carries, is explosive, can break big plays, and is getting a really pristine matchup at home against a team that seems like they've given up and are coming across the country. So I just think he's an easy value play. I mean, I'm going to have him on most of my lineups.
If the Dolphins do score like 49, like you said, which, I mean, their offense hasn't shown it this year, but they should still be capable of it, then you're going to be eating. With all of them are going to be eating.
Yeah, I mean, I will have lineups in play that are just like total Dolphins stacks, like Tua, Chain, Hill,
Onslaught,
Smith. I'm going to have like Onslaught Dolphins lineups. I'm not going to do that one here, but I will have that in play. The guy who we want to bring this back with is Jacoby Myers. If you look at Jacoby Myers, look at his game logs, he's only 5,600, and you see his price has been like around there forever. He's getting peppered. Look at his targets. Like why is his price moving up? And this is sort of an interesting thing with what we were talking about with receivers before. The top receivers are really not performing, but like the mid-range guys, there's some guys that are seeing a ton of targets, and it's like the mid-range guys' prices aren't going up, and the top guys' prices aren't coming down. So I'm not really sure why. Like, they're just assuming like, well, he's Jacoby Myers and that's Tyreek Hill. But it's like, if you look at how they've performed, it doesn't make a lot of sense that one guy is $2,000 more than the other. So I'm happy to take like 9 to 11 targets with him at 5,600 and just say like, okay, well, if the Dolphins are putting up a ton of points, the Raiders will probably throw because they're losing. And so he's probably going to see 10 targets again, and like 10 targets at 5.6K, like, sure, whatever. I'll just take it and say, if it misses, it misses, and I'll live with it. So
no, I like that shout. Absolutely.
And we're not actually going to use a Dolphins receiver in this lineup. And that's partially to make it a little more unique, because most people that play Tua will play a Dolphins receiver. And also because A-Chain has been like a wide receiver one. So you're still getting a lot of the benefit of stacking him there. And most people just won't want to do it this way. So this will make it a little more unique.
Oh, yeah. Like that. Awesome, dude. All right. Where do you want to go next?
For the second running back spot, we're going to play CMC. I know he's not going to sneak up on anybody, but he played 89% of the snaps last week. He's been the best player in fantasy when he's healthy for a couple of years now. He's at home in a good matchup. He should probably be like 9.5. It's hard to think that he shouldn't be more. So again, he'll be a staple of my lineups this week. I mean, it just seems like he's going to score 30 like he usually does. And if he played 89% of the snaps last week, you got to think he's pretty healthy. So, I think he's another one I think is pretty easy.
Yeah, just fundamentally underpriced. And I'll probably have a lot of him as well this week. I locked him last weekend, so I should definitely play him again this week.
For sure. It's a better matchup, and he's clearly healthy. And so CMC will be one that I'm gonna play, a lot of. All right, next receiver we're gonna put in there. Go find Tillman for Cleveland.
Oh yeah, man, another great play.
This is another one where if you look at his box score, like, why isn't his price coming up? I don't know, but okay, I'll just play him. I mean, I guess it's come up.
It's come up, but yeah, I mean, I guess, maybe DraftKings is trying to slow play it a little bit, but he could easily be another 1K and still be a good play. Yeah,
I mean, if he was 6.3, I'd still be interested. So 5.3 feels like a no-brainer almost. I mean, if you look at his targets since Winston came in and he took over, 12, 9, and 11. So
yeah,
he's seeing basically 10 targets a game, and he's being used in the red zone. He's scored 3 touchdowns. Like, he's really their wide receiver one, honestly. And I don't know why with how good he looks that they didn't use him before. But they didn't. So,
man.
Yeah, but he's clearly really taken over as the wide receiver one there, and a good matchup against another team that has kind of given up. I mean 5.3, like, okay, if you're gonna give me a guy who's a wide receiver one and seeing 10 targets a game at 5.3, I'm gonna take it. So he's another one sort of in that same boat where he's just underpriced for his targets.
Yeah,
and we're gonna stick with that.
We're gonna
stick with that theme at wide. That's kind of our theme, is mid-range guys that are underpriced for their targets. And so we're gonna go find Cortland Sutton, who I think is 5.9.
Yes, give me Sutton, man.
Here's another one below 6K. Look at his box score. If you look at his box scores, look at his targets. 11, 10, 9 in the last 3 weeks. I mean, he had that fluky game where they didn't target him, and it seems like since then they've basically said, like, what were we doing? Like, we didn't throw the ball to our best player all game, and they've made a concerted effort to get him the ball, and he's rewarded them. I mean, he's produced. So why would they stop? Other than that fluky game where he didn't get a target, I mean, his other 4 games in there, you would take all of those scores at his price. I mean, you'd be really happy with some of them, and like even the 15-pointer, like, you wouldn't be miserably upset at 5.9. Like, it's not exactly what you want, but you'd be like, okay, well, if the rest of my team's good, like, I can still be fine. So, I just see him as, why is he not more when he's seeing all those targets, when he's put up good games the last 3 weeks?
Yeah.
And he has a good matchup at home. I don't know. But
yeah, man, I mean, the Broncos are Bo Nix is seeming to get better as the season goes on. He's obviously got a great offensive coach in Sean Payton, so it feels like Cortland Sutton, by this time next year, I could see him being a lot more expensive than he is now. So again, I like that play, like the whole direction of this lineup right now.
So let's keep our theme going here and go to our flex. And at flex, we're going to play Hopkins. Now,
and so we got 4 receivers between 5,300 and 5,900 in this lineup. Good stuff.
Mm-hmm. And that's where the value is to me this week. And if you look at Hopkins, now he's not quite as clear, like, oh, he's just getting a ton of targets. But if you look at his box score and you think about it, in a way he is. We can only really look at the last 2 games because that's when he took over. You know what I mean? Like, took over, the Chiefs started playing for real. So against Tampa, obviously he had a great game. He saw 9 targets. Against Denver, he didn't have a horrible game, and he was shadowed by Surtain. Surtain shadowed him. So he still saw 5 targets and didn't have a horrible game. Like, what would make you think if he saw 9 targets before that, was shadowed by Surtain, still saw 5, that he's not going to see 10 this week? Yeah. I think he's going to see 9 or 10 again this week. And again, he's seeing them from Mahomes, and it's a game like Bills Chiefs. We're not like excited about like we would have been in prior years, because we're like, well, the Bills are not the same team and the Chiefs aren't the same team, and they both kind of don't put up points the way that they used to, but they still have the same quarterbacks. And I don't think it would take a whole lot for that game to take off. So, I'm totally cool just throwing in Hopkins at 5,700, saying he got shadowed last week and people think he like had a bad week, but really he just had a really hard matchup, and just taking him. So I think, again, he's another one to me that's sort of like, okay, I'm just going to take it, 5,700, I'll just take it. So tight end, sort of in the theme of thinking like maybe that game is going to be better than people expect. We're going to take Dawson Knox, and he's 3,500. The idea there is Kincaid's probably going to sit. So Knox will be the primary tight end there. He didn't practice. He left the game, didn't come back, hasn't practiced this week. I think the tea leaves are pointing towards he's probably going to sit. So, if he sits, Knox becomes the every down tight end there. Kansas City has been lit on fire by tight ends. It's the one real chink in their defensive armor. And so if you think that game might take off, take Knox on one side, take Hopkins on the other, and sort of go on with it and just say, I hope that game is better than people think.
Yes, and Knox should be definitely on the field. You would think that he gets a decent number of snaps if Kincaid is out. And so the opportunity, if he gets a shot in the red zone, a couple targets, easily pays off that.
Yep. And now we come down to our defense. I seem to like the number 2,500 for defense. The Jaguars worked out last week. And we're going to go with the Steelers. I don't know why the Steelers are 2,500, man. That is disrespectful, in my opinion. I mean, I know that the Ravens have been good and that they're a good offense. And I wrote this game up, and I said in the game, in the write-up, that the Ravens have been the best offense in the league this year, and they have been. There's no other way to say it. So, but to drop the Steelers defense all the way down to 2,500. I mean, look at how many fantasy points per game they've averaged. Almost 10.
Yeah, it's huge.
They've allowed the second fewest points in the league. They have a fierce pass rush. They're loaded top to bottom, this defense. The Steelers spend the most money on defense of any team in the league by a large factor. They had a really good draft where they added some rookies that have overperformed in Beanie Bishop and Peyton Willis. They have stars at every level: Joey Porter Jr., Minkah Fitzpatrick, TJ Watt, Cameron Hayward. This defense is really good. And they're at home in a rivalry game. Like, they see Lamar Jackson twice a year. Like, he's not new to them. If you look back, like, at the Steelers' history against Lamar Jackson, he doesn't do that well against the Steelers traditionally. So, for them to be 2,500 to me is just disrespectful. They've been one of the best defenses in the league. They're an elite unit, and this is a division rivalry game at home. That place is going to be rocking. This is the biggest game of the year for the Steelers. How you drop them to 2,500? Like, they're just going to get run over. Like, they're not. So
yeah, that's a great find, dude. You're absolutely right. That's gonna. I mean, you kind of get the feeling of just an AFC North just slugfest, and yeah, that is really low for the Steelers defense.
I just think at that price, like, I don't care who they're playing, and they're at home. Like, if they were 2,500 on the road in Baltimore, I'd still be saying, like, it's too low. But, like, they're at home. I mean, I don't understand it, but I'm gonna play the Steelers defense, and they're not supposed to be chugged. No one's seen it that way. Like, they're not supposed to be owned. I think they're supposed to be, like, minuscule ownership. If Lamar lights him up, he lights him up. But I don't think that he's going to come into AccuSure Stadium, that I still want to call Heinz Field, and drop 40.
That's right. You're in Pittsburgh, right?
I'll be at this game. Full disclosure, I'll be at this game. I'm a Steelers season ticket holder.
Go. Yes.
I'm a huge Steelers fan. I got a lot of money on the Steelers to win the division, plus 850 at the start of the year. I'm going to be there, going wild.
Dude, Steelers are just, man, that organization just keeps year in and year out, man. They're just always there.
They really, this year, I have to give them a lot of credit. They basically said, we don't have a quarterback, and we're going to just swing away at some free quarterbacks that nobody else wants in Fields and Wilson, and we're just going to spend a ton of money on the defense. And we're just going to say, like, hey, you can still win championships with an elite defense. And everybody seems like they've forgotten that it's such a quarterback-driven league. You can still win by being elite on defense. And that's the Steelers. That's their strategy. That's what they did. They traded away Deontay Johnson for a cornerback. They spent free agent money on Patrick Queen. Like, they made the decision, we're going to win on defense. And they've been winning on defense. Their defense has been absolutely great. So to price them as if they are a flimsy defense, like, to be 2,500, that's like you're a bad defense. I think it's ridiculous. I think they're a clear value this week, and I'm going to have a lot of the Steelers defense.
Yeah, man. Plus EV move right there. And that's the lineup right there for those listening on the pod. The lineup that we closed on, Tua at the QB, Devon Achane, Christian McCaffrey with Jacoby Myers, Cedric Tillman, Cortland Sutton, and DeAndre Hopkins, 4 kind of mid-range receivers. Dawson Knox at the tight end, and the Steelers underpriced at 2,500. One of the best defenses in the league to finish it out. Pappy, great stuff, dude. Any other thoughts before we ship this one out?
Pittsburgh's going to the Super Bowl.
Let's go, man.
Pittsburgh's going to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I would take my squad in the Super Bowl as well. Rematch of Super Bowl, whatever it was. Anyway, that's good stuff, dude. All right, man. Good luck in Week 11.
I'll see you guys at the top of the leaderboards.
See you guys there. Thanks for tuning in.